Welcome back to Cruising America, everyone. Today we're visiting Wonder World Cave and Adventure Park in San Marcos, Texas. We're Steve and Kathleen. We're cruising America in our 35-foot fifth wheel RV, chasing 70-degree weather year-round. If you'd like to watch our previous videos, please click the Cruising America playlist link in the description below this video. Otherwise, enjoy our current episode starting now. Ever want to explore an earthquake from inside the Earth? Established in 1903, Wonder World is the first commercial show cave to open for public viewing in Texas. The cave is now home to Wonder World Park, with an in-house wildlife park providing fun and entertainment for the entire family. Wonder Cave, the primary attraction of the park, is an ancient earthquake cave and a recorded Texas historic landmark. It is known as a dry-formed cave as the fissure was opened by an earthquake, not erosion. The quake produced the Balcones fault, and the fault is visible in the cave ceiling. Guides reveal stories of past geological eras of the Earth's history and point out fossilized prehistoric life encased in the many strata formations. They also show the huge boulders suspended mid-air, just part of the spectacular and rare sights the cave offers.
So before we head down into the cave itself, I'd like to give you all a little bit of backstory on how this place was discovered. So all the way back in 1893, what we call the gift shop up here actually used to be the home of Mark and Elizabeth Beavers. Now back in those days, there was no running water, so you'd have to make a 7-mile round trip hike to the San Marcos River and back, carry all of that water back in buckets. And in the Texas heat especially, that's quite a chore. Mr. Beavers had enough of that, so he decided to do what a lot of his neighbors were doing, try to dig for a well on the property. So he dug all over the place and wanted to stay in the parking lot until one day his drill broke, he gave up, and that was it for a while. Some time passed, and Mrs. Beavers is out here on the back porch doing some laundry for her family. Noticed the steam was coming up from these rocks over here, and where there's steam, there is water. So she pointed at the steam, pointed at her husband, told the man to start digging. So he got a bunch of his buddies together with pickaxes, and they chipped away at the rock. You can actually see the original staircase right here that they carved out all the way back in 1893. We still have some of the original pickaxe marks on both of these walls. And they dug all the way down until they found this perfectly formed sliding glass door. No, I'm just kidding. They actually found a hole in the rock about this big. None of those big, strong men could fit through there, so they did the next best thing. Went to the neighbor's house, got their 13-year-old son, tied a rope around his waist, handed him a candle, and kicked him down the hole. Luckily, he came back alive, told the men what he found, and they opened up the entrance some more and uncovered the cave. Y'all ready to go see it?
Yeah.
Well, all the way back in 1893 when this cave was first discovered, this right here was actually the only room that could be explored. That other pathway down there was blocked by a giant boulder at the time. But for Mr. Beavers, this was enough. You know, he had a brand new basement, a very literal man cave. What better place to get your buddies together every weekend to play poker and drink moonshine? So they actually had a winner's table about here. They had a loser's table here. But you do not want to be a loser at Mr. Beaver's poker games. You see this hole in the rock back here? It goes about 30 feet to the side, 30 feet down. Leads to a room that can fit about 4 people that we call the Crystal Palace. That's where they stashed all the drinks and distilling equipment. And if you lost at cards, you had to crawl all the way back there and bring drinks back for everybody. You know, they had their fun for a while, but eventually Mrs. Beavers got tired of her husband spending all of his time and money down here. Got tired of him coming back up to the surface happier than when he went down. So she called the sheriff on him to put things right. What do you think the sheriff did?
And joined in.
And he joined in. It wasn't until the sheriff lost all of his money that he finally got the judge involved. And the judge gave Mr. Beavers a choice. He could go to prison for 7 years or sell the property and never return. Luckily, he was a smart enough man, decided to live out the rest of his days elsewhere, and the property came under possession of the local judge at the time, who then auctioned it off to a guy named W.S. Davis. Mr. Davis opened this place up for the first public cave tours in 1903. People would come down here with just a candle, See this one single room, head right back up, kind of boring. But so that didn't continue too long. He did that for like a little over a decade. He auctioned it off again, sold it to a guy named A.B. Rogers. And you're going to learn later on in the cave that he was a bit of a con man. His first con was actually buying this cave. So he got it for $50, a gray horse, and a saddle. He knew that gray horse was sick, and it died 2 days after he sold it. So he got quite a bargain on this place. So he did that same old, just one candle, one room, right back up to the surface thing that Mr. Davis was doing. But one day he noticed some water was draining behind that rock over there. He had an idea, he put some explosives on it, blew it up, and with that single explosion he actually uncovered the entire rest of the cave that we're going to see today. So everything we're going to see was already there, just blocked, and he opened it up. Right, but before we head down there, I got some cool geological stuff to point out. So you see this smooth looking rock up here? Yeah. This is Georgetown limestone. This right here, this rougher stuff, this is Buda limestone. And together they kind of act like a giant Brita filter. So all the moisture that you see down here is actually rainwater from about a month ago. It takes water 3 to 4 weeks to come down from the surface, through all that porous rock, and get land down here on us. But it gets super purified along the way. It's actually 2% cleaner than your drinking water. So you don't have to worry about any weird germs or anything like that. It's some of the cleanest water you'll ever see. If any falls on you, it's called a cave kiss. It's 7 years good luck, 14 if you catch it in your mouth, and all of those drops stack up, so try to get it.
Dripping on my hand.
If you change your mind at any point, let me know, and we'll see. It's called that way because it's formed by the water flowing over it.
Cool.
In all other caves where you see this, it's illegal to touch it because the oils in your skin will clog the rock and stop it from forming. But since these have been touched many times over the past 100 years, you can legally touch them. Yeah, this one right here, I've heard it's 10 years good luck if you slap it.
All right.
Alright, so welcome everyone to the grand hallway. We call it that. It's grand, looks like a hallway, but also functions much like a real grand hallway would that you might find in a mansion or something like that. As was mentioned before, this is a dry form cave, which might sound a bit confusing because of the moisture down here. What that means is that instead of water slowly carving out a cavern over time underground, this entire cave was actually formed by a single earthquake about 35 million years ago. So if you look up here, you see this giant crack that travels along the ceiling. This right here is the Balcones fault line. It stretches across a large portion of Texas. And this is the region where 2 tectonic plates meet. So on this side, on this side we have the Edwards Plateau, which is the beginning of the Texas Hill Country. And on this side we have the Gulf Coastal Plains, which extends towards Houston and the coast. If you were getting out to that watchtower out in the parking lot, you could actually look this way and see the hills starting. If you look this way, you'd see flat land for miles and miles and miles. But if you look over here, you see how the walls, they go out and then in and then out and then in, and do the opposite over here on the other side. It's because if you were strong enough, you could shove both of these walls back together and they would fit perfectly like a giant puzzle. We have a funny looking rock right up here that juts out a bit. We call that our cave oven mitt. It actually fits right into the hole on the other side that we call our cave oven.
Wow.
It's pretty cool. But Mr. Rogers, back in the day when he first opened this place up, there was no handrails, there was no light bulbs. People would pay him to come down here with the candle. And what did they come to see? He actually invited them to come see the world's one and only petrified sweet potato patch. See those little rocks in the wall over there?
Are those sweet potatoes?
We had some students from UT doubt whether or not they were actually sweet potatoes. So they took some out of the wall over here, and guess what? They were. No, I'm just kidding.
Right there.
So these are actually what we call chert nodules. There's a funny looking one right up here.
Yeah.
But all chert is, it's an undeveloped form of flintstone. So much like diamond needs a lot of time and heat and pressure to fully form, flint is the same way. But when these walls ripped apart millions of years ago, they lost all of that heat and pressure, and now they are chert forever. Sometimes we call them Peter Pan stones because they will never grow up. And right along that chert, you see all along the walls, you see this green stuff? Yeah. It's going to be all in these walls over here. We call that lichen. It's similar to a moss or an algae. It grows due to the moisture down here, but it's kind of interesting. If you touch it, it'll eat the oils right off of your hand, leaving your skin feeling nice and fresh. And for that reason, we call this the cave that pets you back. And right up in that, you see these carvings, all these letters. We got a ton of big ones down this wall over here. Now, these are what we call cave graffiti. And the reason for that is kind of funny. So you know how if you were to carve your name into a tree, the bark would slowly grow back over time? For some reason, they thought these rocks would grow back the same way. They don't. So since 2002, it is actually a federal offense to add on to that. You know, we try to preserve nature where we can, sometimes. But with that, do we have any questions about anything in here before we head down?
What's the name of this fault line?
The Balcones fault line. So imagine when this cave was first discovered, you know, pretend this lighter is actually a candle. This would be about all the light that you would have down here.
Oh, wow.
So Mr. Rogers, being the con man that he was, he took full advantage of this fact. You know, he owned this cave, he knew what was in it, he knew full well that there were no gold or gems to be found. But he told people there was, and they'd come down here, they'd pay him to come looking for those golden gems. So what he would do is he'd actually take his wife's jewelry in the middle of the night, grind it up with a mortar and pestle, and sprinkle it along the walls down here. So people would come down here, have this much light, they'd see that glitter on the wall, they'd scoop it all up, getting super excited. You go back up to the surface, turns out they had a whole bunch of nothing, but he didn't really care. But imagine one of those cave kisses from earlier, one of those drops of water, to land on your one and only candle.
Oh, no.
So this right here, minus phone screens and stuff, is a pretty unique phenomenon. We call it absolute darkness, and it can only be found in 4 places in the known universe. The first is in caves and caverns like this, far away from any man-made or natural light. The second is at the very bottom of the ocean, when the density is the layer of bedrock that it was resting upon. And if any of y'all watched the Flintstones growing up, you'd know that Flintstones live in bedrock.
Yeah.
In fact, they do. All these dark spots right here, those are Flintstones living in that layer of bedrock. And these are actually the finished form of those chert nodules that we saw up above, those sweet potatoes. If they had a bit more time, they would have turned dark just like this. Right under this layer of bedrock, you see this white powdery stuff on both of these walls? You can reach out, touch it, rub it between your fingers, smell it if you want to. It smells kind of funny. It smells kind of earthy. This right here is gypsum. It's the second softest mineral besides talc, and it's kind of vital to our daily lives. So we use it in drywall and concrete. It's used in cosmetics, so rub it on your face if you want to. It's used in the cheese at Chipotle, because their vegan cheese doesn't have the same proteins and stuff. They stick this stuff in there to give it that consistency. And it used to be used in toothpaste because it makes your teeth really white. We don't use it anymore because it turns out brushing with rocks makes your teeth really small. But all this gypsum, all the limestone that this cave is made out of, these are all ancient calcium deposits left behind from that ancient sea. So over the span of millions and millions of years, layer after layer, all of the bones, all of the shells from the life that lived there would sink to the bottom, decompose, leave that calcium behind until eventually there was so much of it and the pressure was so great that it compacted together into solid stone. So everything you see here, all these walls, these are the remains of ancient sea life from the seas of Texas. And if you want to get creative, you can think of this giant, or this whole cave as one gigantic fossil. And it's kind of interesting to me how so much of the ancient life, what they've left behind today, how vital it is to us in our daily lives. You know, there's kind of interconnectedness. We wouldn't have so much of what we have if they didn't live there. It's pretty cool. Right, so this next hallway right here is known as Haircut Hallway for a reason. That ancient sea mud is super rough and jagged. If you bump your head, you are leaving with a haircut.
You could duck or hit your head.
Submarine?
Oh, the whole lot.
No.
Those are so pretty, Annie.
Oh, wow.
I want to take it off.
Sorry.
Oh, wow.
Right now you are standing 96 feet below the surface.
Guess
I
what?
have something kind of funny to show you guys. Just remember that story up top about Mr. Beaver's trying to dig for a well until his drill broke and he gave up? And you take my flashlight and stick it into the ceiling right here. This is where his drill broke, right next to the water that he was looking for. So if he had struck water, he'd just be a guy with a well, would have never chipped away that first staircase, and we would not be in here today. Mr. Rogers, however, did discover this well. He's the one who built these rocks up right here. That's actually the original pulley that he installed right there over 100 years ago. It's covered in rust. I'd rather not touch that. But his 2 sons, they'd spend about 4 hours coming down here with the candle. They'd have the rope and bucket, and they'd bring water up. And they'd go all the way back through that darkness. I don't know if that beats a 7-mile hike, but I guess they thought it did. They're one of the reasons why we warn so strongly against no smoking in the cave. Is if you look at the ceiling right up here, see all these black dots? Those are candle marks that Mr. Rogers' sons left over 100 years ago. And each of those marks goes several inches straight into the rock. That's just what a candle can do. It's permanent damage. Just imagine how dark and tarnished it'd be down in here if we had people smoking. This right here, this well, looks like it goes about 12 feet now. That's actually a false bottom. It's a solid slab of limestone right there. Under that slab, though, it's about a 120-foot drop straight into the Edwards Aquifer. And you don't want to fall down there because we got some more of that absolute darkness. If you go down, you're not coming back up.
Yes, let's see.
But we have some interesting species that live down there. We have the Texas blind shrimp, the Texas blind catfish, and the Texas blind salamander. Any idea what they have in common? They're all from Texas. No, but yes, they are all blind. So because they live in that absolute darkness, they've evolved to the point where they don't even have eyes at all. There's nothing to see down there. And in fact, they also have a completely transparent skin. You can see all their insides. And there's also nothing to hide from. You can't see. So why waste the energy with skin color and all that?
She's like a dark.
But they are all protected species because the Edwards Aquifer is the only place where they live. And that's pretty good news to us, especially here in Hays County, because that makes this the only federally protected aquifer. And this aquifer right here supplies water to about 16 counties in the area. It's what gives us drinking water during a drought and keeps us kind of independent, not having to truck in water from other counties, maybe even other states like California has to do. Unfortunately, it used to come up to about here. Now the water level is all the way down there. And a huge part of that, it's not just drought, because usually aquifers are kind of drought proof. They keep a reservoir of water even when it doesn't rain. But a lot of the new population growth that we've been having, a lot of the new infrastructure and building contributes to this right here. So all the pavement that we have, all the buildings, roofs, sidewalks, parking lots, they keep water on the surface where it evaporates instead of soaking back down into the ground. So not only do we have less water going back into the aquifer, we also have more people pulling out what's already in there. And so legislators are trying to figure out zoning laws and stuff to keep us from damaging the aquifer permanently, because if the water levels drop too low, surface pollutants can get in and pollute the entire aquifer permanently.
So he's a nuke on the submarine.
Right above me, we have this giant rock that looks like it's going to fall on my head. We call this a whetstone, or a hope stone, because we hope that they don't fall on us. There's another one down back that way, another one down over here. These are the only things keeping this entire cave open. If these rocks were not placed, this whole cave would close up by a few inches every single year until it was completely shut. And that's why this is the only earthquake-formed show cave in North America. You know, earthquakes happen all the time, all over the place. These gaps open up in the ground during most of those earthquakes. But having the walls that come together and having rocks fall in place and caught, and those rocks being strong enough to not be instantly crushed, that's pretty rare. And then so these rocks alone have been keeping this whole place open for 35 million years. It's pretty special. But the reason for that is because this is also one of the least seismologically active areas in the country. So even other caves that form like this, they close up as soon as they form, because another earthquake happens.
I just don't think it's fair to get taxed.
Because they're part of like
Alright,
Texas.
so congratulations everyone. You have survived the trek through Wonder Cave. You walked about 3/4 of a mile underground with almost 100 feet below the surface. So give yourselves a round of applause for that one. This right here is the last room of our cave on the cave tour before we head up the elevator together to go to the anti-gravity house. This is also one of the coolest rooms, I think. We call this our fossil room. And if you look up at the ceiling here, you can see why. The whole ceiling is covered in fossils. So these are a specific type of fossil known as a trace fossil. So, you know, much like a dinosaur might leave its footprint in the mud, and that footprint would fossilize. You know, it's not the animal itself, but it's a trace that it was there. These are the worst ones.
Before going, please know the cave has steep stairs and is not recommended for people recovering from any recent hip or leg surgeries, or for those suffering from heart or breathing conditions. The cave does have railings and lighting throughout, and several opportunities to sit along the way. The walk is approximately 1 mile long. In addition to the cave and wildlife park, Wonderworld also has an anti-gravity house, arcade, gift store, and gem mining experience.